Today is Friday, March 27th, and this is your forecast for today. So let's look at basically what's going to be happening with the categorical today. We have a active system that is going to be moving through today, and in the same location tomorrow will be affected by a much more severe system. So this is the smaller one, but it still holds some severity to it, so we will actually have to check out both. So check out our Twitter for more updates on what will be happening tomorrow. We will be posting about it today, but this is for today, this forecast is. So with today's severe threat, we are seeing once again that slight chance over parts of East Kansas, Missouri, and into Illinois, but our wind threat actually goes much further east. It goes all the way into the very west part of West Virginia, and it covers all of central Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. So you can expect some higher wind gusts within that. They're not going to be super big severe storms the further east you go, but you could still have some isolated thunderstorms that could produce some higher winds. We do have a tornado threat for today. It is right on the border of Kansas and Missouri, and that is our highest percentage, but right in there, once again, there's nothing severe that is going to be going to the east. It's all kind of, once it produces, it's just going to happen all at once. So, I mean, it's a much easier looking forecast than tomorrow, because tomorrow's is going to be so big, but nonetheless we're going to continue to focus on this one here today, because once again there is a tornado threat. It's not like there's nothing happening today. We do have just as big of a threat for a tornado in this location as we do tomorrow, so we're going to have to keep looking into this, because stuff develops and changes. So expect the highest percentage to be right along the Kansas and Missouri border for today. So our convective outlook for today says that there is a slight risk of severe thunderstorms from a portion of eastern Kansas into the Midwest. Widespread thunderstorms capable of producing mainly isolated large hail are expected from eastern Kansas into the Midwest. A few locally strong wind gusts, perhaps a tornado or two, are also possible. So expect that tornado chance to be once again that 5% right along the Kansas and Missouri border. We will have some more severe storms pop up, but we're going to look at the temperature here and see why these storms are going to be, isolated A, and then B, they're going to be popping up for such a long distance. So our temperatures are quite nice today. We have temperatures all the way up into the 60s and 70s into the Oklahoma, Arkansas area, and then we have upper 50s, maybe getting into 60s everywhere else. But in the morning hours, expect in the kind of area, the Midwest, the area that we're looking at here, expect temperatures in the 50s. As we get into the afternoon hours, we do see, of course, some of these temperatures start to rise, but right around lunchtime and into, the 1, 2, 3 p.m. hours, we see some of that 70 degrees start to push north. And that's when we see these little kind of bubbles, as you can see, where these 70s and a lot of these really warm temperatures, even up towards 80 in a lot of locations, will be pushing and continuing to try to force its way into the north. And that's going to allow some of these storms to develop along the way. Of course, we're going to keep pushing north with that, but some of those 80s are going to start to die off as we get into the, kind of late evening hours, and we will see some of these storms start to kind of head their way east, but anything is just rain from there on out. We still do have the 50s across much of that region, but you have to note too, right where that line is at, we still do have some 60s, so you can't roll out maybe 1 or 2 grumbles of thunder with some of those storms that are developing later on in the evening. And at the end of our day, we are going to see, kind of that ridge build right there where we're bringing some of those upper 60s and 70s into much of the Missouri and Illinois area, and we kind of have it dive down into Texas and all the way up through Oklahoma. And that's going to bring some energy that we'll be able to see in Oklahoma that will actually be tomorrow's energy that gains into a whole system of severe storms. So looking at our dew points, we have, right around the morning hours here, we have the temperatures are the high enough that we have that humidity being drawn north. So we have the 60s and into the 50s across much of the nation for the morning hours. So as we get later in the day, we're going to see these dew points get higher and kind of shift to the north as that moisture starts to build. And we'll keep an eye on the Oklahoma area, as that is where the energy is going to be flowing into the Missouri-Kansas border for these severe storms to build throughout the day. And really, right around the lunchtime, mid-afternoon is where we're going to see, these highest amounts start to shift from northeast Oklahoma up into the portion right there where that highest percentage of tornado probability is going to be at. We still see 50s and those upper 40s in every other location for the whole day. So across the Midwest, we also see some 60s start to make their way in here. So, that's where we're going to see that guidance with some of that higher precipitation amounts are going to be going. So expect a lot of that to be producing and then just kind of flowing through. And if they stay severe, then they'll be severe. If they start out severe, there's a higher percentage of them dying the further east they get. So the same thing goes for the late evening hours. We still have the same, it's still traveling to the north. We still have a lot of those 70s starting to break their way in there, and that's where our severe threat is. So it's about the same from 18 to the 21Z time slots. And looking at the 00Zs for Saturday, which is Friday evening, right around 9 p.m. in a lot of locations, we are seeing that common trend of, these 60s are starting to kind of stall out right where they're at. They will stay kind of in that area and fill in a few spots, but nothing too productive on the side of that. Really just some continuation of what could be occurring, and, just any rain showers that are being produced will just keep going through. But really our focus starts to shift at this time to a whole different location that we'll get into here in a minute. So these dew points are kind of that ridge there, or where those temperatures are higher because of the humidity. So we'll see, how all this is going to affect the severe storm system for the overnight hours and what will produce severe-wise tomorrow. So our cape throughout the day today. So this is going to be, those blues and those oranges into the reds are going to be where we have the highest chance of these storms, maybe some supercells producing. We'll look at the supercell composition here as we go along. But, just kind of in the morning hours, we have all that energy is available over Oklahoma. And we see kind of that trend from, Texas, where we start to see some energy in the south part of Texas. And then really in the north central part of Texas is where we see kind of that tail. But the really key factor here is what's happening in the Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas corner right there. We could see some of those higher readings from the Cape start to be produced. So we'll see, what this leads to here in a sec. So as I said, this orange and those reds are going to start making their way into right where that highest tornado percentage is at. So we see them start to kind of break out over Oklahoma. So we'll see these thunderstorms building in Oklahoma and then training their way into Kansas and eventually into Missouri. And then those will start breaking their way to the east as we go throughout the day. But also you could see right along from what the Midwest, discussion said, we're seeing some of that energy start to break off and work its way through Illinois, southern Indiana, and eventually into Ohio. And this is where we see the kind of the big differences and everything is we see Oklahoma, Oklahoma looks like there could be either a squall line or just some, severe storms going through, but that severe threat is officially pushed through by the 18Z time, or 21Z time, pardon me, is going to be working its way through Missouri. And then you could also see, parts of Kentucky also have that kind of similar amount of cape. So we could see, some storms, some stronger storms, thunderstorms, and it's all with this daytime heating. And you can notice it matches that dew point, which matches the temperature on that curve right there. So this is all kind of connected overall. So as we get into kind of the late evening to overnight hours, we're going to see the energy still continue on in Kentucky and into Missouri, but those storms are going to kind of start to die out because we're going to see a whole other system start to kind of build into Texas. So as you could kind of see there right along Oklahoma, Texas, we could see, some of those storms start to develop in there. And mainly, if we're going to see a shower in there, it probably will be a thunderstorm, but the bigger thing to kind of take a hold of and look at is that's going to be saving under like a cap. It's going to stay there, and we'll see that produce into tomorrow. And in the late evening hours, we will see that energy work its way into Texas, in the Texas-Oklahoma area, and then continuing further into the north into Kansas. So really that little blob that we're seeing, that we're focusing on right at the border of Oklahoma, Texas, we're going to see what that energy does and what it produces into as we get into the overnight hours. But the real focus of this energy is going to be into tomorrow. You can kind of see down there in the Mexico how there's a super high reading. We saw it at the 00Zs. We saw it all the way up in the 4 and 5,000s, but now we could see in the 3,500s. We're going to watch what that energy does overnight, but it's going to flow right through Texas, and that's going to be gaining energy for tomorrow. So looking at the most unstable cape, that's what we're going to be focusing on right here, because this is going to be what really is showing us where these storms. We've seen the cape where all the energy is, but we're going to see, okay, where is storm production and convection going to be occurring? So looking at the morning hours, we have it right across to East Oklahoma, all the way into Texas, and I mean, Missouri, the entire state is full of it, so we're going to see that. But note, too, we could see, right along the Ohio River, we see all the way up, we have that energy starting to make its way. So that's why we see that wind and that thunderstorm strain kind of go all the way through the Midwest, is because we have the energy for these thunderstorms to be built all the way through there. The most severe ones, obviously, being in Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and into parts of Kansas and Texas. So the general theme of this, we're going to see this kind of traveling to the east, northeast area. So we'll see it work its way through Arkansas and up through Oklahoma. And obviously we're seeing it through that Missouri, Kansas area. But we can kind of see right here in this reading that first break off of that little cell that will work its way into Kentucky that will bring a severe threat to the Ohio River Valley. The severity here, it's just continuing. We see that little break that we agreed on with the cape and everything into the Kansas, Missouri portion, but we do have a lot of it that is actually trapped up in our atmosphere right along the Mississippi River there up at Illinois. We still do have that severe and that potential tornado threat there, but we're going to see that cap build there, so we're going to see it all kind of be trapped, so not much convection will occur out of it. We will have those thunderstorms, and they will have the energy. It just won't break the caps. We won't have these super big, strong supercells that are going to be putting down tornadoes like crazy. That's what splits today from tomorrow is. Tomorrow the storms will break the cap. Today we won't see that. And nothing new with these last few scans here, because I mean we're seeing the exact same trend as it's traveling to the northeast. One thing to note here at the 21Z time, you can see that bubble start to form over Arkansas. That's where we're going to see a split as we kind of go through what's going to divide where this energy is going, A, and then B, it's going to be drawn back to Oklahoma. We will see that energy still flow through there, but we're going to see that kind of a weird trend that's going to occur that will split these two systems apart and allow tomorrow to be the severe day. So we see this split start to happen here, and we start to see, as we showed in the early Cape model, we still see that blob start to form over Texas, and we can kind of see the trend of where this is going. As we see the energy still continue over Illinois, Indiana, and into Ohio, we could see some thunderstorms through there too, but nothing really to focus on yet, because that's just continuing energy that's dying off. And in the evening hours is where we see that die off, and kind of the energy is dispersed into many different regions. It's kind of messy over many parts. We see that severe line kind of occur across that very south corner of Kansas. But looking back at Oklahoma, we start to see that southwest portion that is showing the signs of severity that we could see, but it's looking like the cap's going to hold, so we'll just see that energy keep gaining and continuing as it's being kind of pumped from the south for tomorrow. So just going through, showing where our supercell composite is at, our super comp. This is going to be where, with all of that energy and all of that in mind, where the highest chance of seeing supercells are, because we have the perfect conditions today to see, some big thunderstorms, but where are the highest chance of supercells specifically going to occur? So looking at this, we could see them, obviously it's over Oklahoma. We're going to see that same trend go with storms all the way through the day. We're going to see that kind of go north and then start to break to the east. So we'll just talk about, what the highest chance is and where that's at. We see kind of a destabilization as we have the energy kind of start to break apart as we saw, and that's going to start to gain again as we get through the day. And a lot of this is due to the daytime heating and where the air and humidity, where the storm is traveling into. So we're really just seeing some light amounts here, nothing really to focus on for this time. Traveling right along, we see that same energy where that split occurs, where we see it in the parts of Kentucky, but looking back at Oklahoma, this is where we see, that higher percentage, that 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, start to gain traction, where we could see it across central Oklahoma. So supercell wise, we could see them, start to build there, but it all depends on, if the cap breaks or not, which we don't think it will. So it looks like it's very unlikely that these will go super severe, but it's traveling in the right direction. So where this is going, these storms will produce. So looking right along here, we see it in the Kentucky. We see where all those big thunderstorms are going to be, but it's a much more concentrated area. Looking back at Oklahoma, it is going right towards our forecasted highest chance of tornadoes location. So we're seeing these storms, the highest chance of supercells at least, going right towards that location. So we could see that, and that is at the 21Z time. So we're looking, after dinner. So we're seeing just before sunset, some of these big storms that could be being produced across the central northern part of Oklahoma and into our kind of aimed target location of Kansas, Missouri. So this is when that kind of destabilization happens, is, right at the after dinner and into the late evening hours. We start to see, where is this energy breaking up and going into, and that's going to be really is what killing the thunderstorms. So there's not going to be too much production after that. We still see a line, but probably rain showers going through. But we start to see that energy focus across Arkansas, but that will also too, since it's getting into the night hours. That's all going to destabilize. So we could have the energy there. It's just that the actual supercells and storms themselves won't continue. And we see the same thing at the, end of the night. We see it right before midnight. We can still see the same thing. We see that die-off of all of the energy, including the summit in Arkansas, as that keeps dying off due to the nighttime hours. But we start to see a little bit of some strengthening into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, as we see that corner right there where it starts to build. We could see what that's going to do. That's, once again, all that energy. So we could have all of that. And we could have some thunderstorms with that, but that's not our huge threat, is not right there, so we're not going to see that produce overnight. So we saw where the supercells are going to be at, so where is the highest chance of tornadoes? We'll just go through this pretty quickly, because, it's going to be where it's going to be at. We'll see where it's going to go with the supercells and stuff, because it's really obvious at this point where our locations are of the most energy. So right here we're seeing northeast, kind of that Tulsa area of Oklahoma. Then we kind of get a weird bubble that forms for the significant tornado parameter because of how that supercell breaks. The supercell comp breaks with all the energy. So we're going to see that kind of destabilization as it decides, okay, where do I want the energy going? Then we see the split. We see the energy kind of go into, oddly, southeast Oklahoma and the northeast Texas, but we see that other part break into Missouri. So we could see, right along where this thing is pointing, we can see where, that split goes. So it's going to be interesting to see where that's going to be there, but it's looking like the highest of this current scan is of Missouri. As we get into the, we're kind of looking at that late evening hour time, right around dinner, we still see that energy and can still see where all of it's going to be at. But really, Missouri is our big focus here, because that's the only energy that is being sustained throughout the entire day. So looking at the kind of overnight hours here, we're going to see a lot of these storms, as we showed before, break up. So we still see energy in the Missouri and then into Arkansas, and then we start to see that build start to occur into Texas. But, that's all dying off due to the nighttime hours. So our highest here is Missouri and Arkansas. Including as we get later, we see this kind of explosion occur of what could possibly happen, but that's with all these readings. So we still see it into Oklahoma and into Texas and everything, but looking at what we're all seeing here, we're not seeing anything during that time that's showing us that that cap's going to be broken and that all of this energy is going to be exploding into, all these tornadoes. So while that does show a high reading, that's where all of our energy is. So we're going to see that be producing for tomorrow, because our tease is about to be coming up here, and it's going to show you, it's going to be a surprise, especially too, that this is our first huge predicted system and outbreak that we predicted ahead of time here in 2020. So it's time for the tease, and here it is. So the Storm Prediction Center put out yesterday and here in this morning that this is the prediction for tomorrow. So we are seeing that moderate chance of tornadoes. So not just a little bit, not like slight like we've been seeing. We see slight all the way from Mississippi all the way up into Ohio, Indiana, into parts of Michigan and Wisconsin, all the way into Iowa and Missouri. But we start to see, into Indiana and really Iowa, Missouri, we see the target of Illinois. We see where that, that higher chance is. We see, moderate start to occur really in northeast Illinois. So that's going to be something we have to focus on tomorrow. Is they're predicting an outbreak currently. We'll get into that in the weekend forecast, and then we're going to post a kind of a briefing for what's going to be happening tomorrow morning for tomorrow to prepare you for that. So our wind outlook, we're seeing kind of the same thing, with a slight set, as I said before. So really, the wind matches up with what's going to be occurring severe-wise, because we're seeing a lot of these severe storms doing the same thing with the wind. Hail is going to be big, obviously, because where we have a lot of hail is where the more severe storms are at, and they're predicting large to very large hail. And it's right along this region right along the border of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. So right there is where our highest chance in that red is where that tornado threat's going to be, and we see that hash for significant hail. So right where you could find that significant hail is where we're going to find tornadoes. Where we see the storms, the huge hail cores, that's where we're going to find the big tornadoes. And there is no doubt, according to their statement, that tornadoes will occur tomorrow, and they're expecting a potential outbreak. And looking at our tornado outlook specifically, we are seeing the significant occurring across this region. We see the 2% across much of the Midwest. We see that 5% kind of break down to the south. And then we see, that 10 to 15% really start to work its way into that same area, Illinois and Indiana. But what really makes this significant is we put that significant on there. And we have all of that right in the central and north part of Illinois. So tomorrow is going to be a very active day if you live there. But make sure to check us out tomorrow, because we're going to be posting a forecast tomorrow morning for your weekends. But also, we're going to be having a video posted that's going to be kind of a briefing of what to expect, where we're looking at it, and all the information that we can gather between now and then. Thank you all very much, and have a good day.